obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
The Live Desk with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Pip Thompson. It's here Monday to Friday on GB News.
From midday, we'll bring you the news as it breaks, whenever it's happening and wherever it's happening, from across the UK and around the world.
Refreshing, feisty, but with a bit of fun too.
If it matters to you, we'll have it covered on TV, radio and online.
Join the Live Desk on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows.
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. That's Mark Dolan Tonight, Friday, Saturday and Sunday from 9. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good evening, wonderful people. It's 9 o'clock. I'm Patrick Christys, and this is GB News Tonight. Britain is officially not a hateful country. Who'd have thought it? Hate crimes have fallen by 5%, and I will give my perspective on what that means for the divisive race baiters who thrive off stoking tensions next. Then I'll get the reaction from my panel. And tonight, it's box office. I am joined by Alison Pearson, Sean Bailey and Amy Nicole Turner. What's not to love? But also on the way, Caroline Lucas has accused the Tories of a dishonesty epidemic. But should it really be a criminal offence for politicians to lie? That's the extreme action. We'd have none of them left, will we? That's the extreme action some MPs want taken, and Niall Gardner and Jenny Barnett will have their say. That's in the clash. This is good. Ex-England manager Kevin Keegan has sparked outrage after saying that he doesn't like female pundits talking about the men's game. Is he just saying what most blokes are actually thinking? England's most capped male footballer, Peter Shilton, takes on Lionesses legend Faye White. That's later. Plus, Rishi Sunak has sealed a new deal with the EU's border agency to help us get tough on illegal migration. But can we really count on the support of our European neighbours, or do we need to take tougher action like, oh, I don't know, turning back the boats? Former Conservative Minister Anne Widdecombe weighs in shortly. And Cara Kennedy joins me to explain why Rishi's plan to permanently stub out cigarettes is illiberal and anti-conservative and part of a wider totalitarian agenda in politics in general. But tomorrow's newspapers' front pages, they're also on the way too. Who better? Kelvin MacKenzie is uncancelled. That's later on in the show. An action-packed 2 hours coming your way right after the news with Polly Middlehurst.
Patrick, thank you, and good evening to you. Well, the main story tonight on GB News is that a man who broke into Windsor Castle armed with a loaded crossbow with the intention of killing the late Queen has been sentenced to 9 years in jail for the crime of treason. Jaswant Singh Chail wandered around inside the grounds for 2 hours on Christmas Day 2021 while the late Queen was in residence. The Old Bailey heard today he'd been encouraged by an artificial intelligence virtual girlfriend with which he'd exchanged thousands of messages. The judge said Chail was non-psychotic and therefore culpable when he devised the plan, but had lost touch with reality and become psychotic by the time he carried it out. Well, also in the news today, Sir Keir Starmer has revealed an extra 700,000 urgent dental appointments would be introduced under a Labour government in plans to improve the nation's oral health. The party says it would also introduce supervised toothbrushing in schools across England in order to tackle preventable tooth decay in children. People in most need of treatments would be prioritised too under proposals aimed at rescuing NHS dentistry, as they said. The plans would be financed, Labour says, by using £111 million a year from abolishing non-domiciled tax status. Now, in news from abroad now, and at least 51 people are thought to have died after a Russian missile hit a cafe-cum-grocery store in northeastern Ukraine. It's reported the victims were holding a memorial service at the time. Ukrainian officials have called it a heinous crime. The attack was the deadliest in Kharkiv since the start of the war. Well, the Prime Minister has been meeting with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, saying Europe must face down the threat from Russia. Rishi Sunak is in Spain for the European Political Community Summit. The Prime Minister condemned today's attack in Ukraine and reiterated the UK's support for the ongoing war. And Rishi Sunak said the only person responsible for the conflict was President Putin.
Just come from meeting President Zelensky where we discussed this horrific attack that has just happened. It just illustrates Russia's barbarity, and President Putin can say all he likes. There is one person responsible for this illegal, unprovoked war, and it is him, and he should stop. And that's why the UK has been steadfast in supporting Ukraine and will continue to do so. I'm proud that we were one of the first and we are one of the largest supporters of Ukraine. That will continue to be the case.
Now, the Princess of Wales has joined some of England's World Cup winning wheelchair rugby league squad today. She got stuck in as well at the event in Hull, where she sat in a wheelchair herself and gave the game a go. Kate, who's patron of the Rugby Football League, is there to promote inclusivity in the sport, much to the delight of all the participants. On TV, online, DAB+ radio and the TuneIn app. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome along, let's get stuck straight in. Britain is, shock horror, not a hateful country. We are not a nation of racist bigots, and that now is a fact. The latest hate crime figures are in, and recorded hate crimes are down 5%. Race-related hate crimes are down 6% year on year. For a long time, a lot of ordinary people have been looking at legacy media outlets or Twitter and wondering, what is this unwelcoming, divided, racist country that you're describing? Because that's not what I see. Indeed, you'd be forgiven for wondering why, if we really are that bad, it seems like the vast majority of the world would like to come and live here. It absolutely cracked me up when Tory MPs said multiculturalism had failed. And then the race baiters who tried to divide us all the time suddenly piped up to say what a wonderfully integrated and loving nation we actually are. They obviously didn't realise their desire to simply disagree with anything a Tory Home Secretary has to say fundamentally shattered their arguments about how unwelcoming and bigoted Britain is. Then you factor in that we've had massive increases in people from ethnic minority backgrounds coming to Britain and rapid population growth in general, which means, quite simply, we have more ethnic minorities than ever before and more people in general than ever before. And yet hate crimes are going down. That really doesn't suit their narrative, does it? There are areas where certain hate crimes are apparently going up. Transphobia, for example. Now, I've got to be honest, I do treat that with a massive pinch of salt, I'm afraid. Very often, women who simply don't want men in their changing rooms or bathrooms are called transphobic. People who don't want children to be transitioned and put on puberty blockers are called transphobic. Now, if these people are being reported to the police and the police are recording those incidents, then I'm sorry, but that, to me, is not an increase in genuine transphobia. I would also point to the fact that there are pretty much entire continents where being trans is essentially a death sentence. So you compare that to Britain, where we'd happily let a trans person dance in front of kids. Now, apparently, religious-based hate crimes are up 9%. A couple of points on this. In 22% of recorded religious hate crimes, the religion was not known. which does make me wonder slightly how on earth you can record that as a religious hate crime, but there we go. I would also politely remind people that there is an increasing number of incidents between different ethnic communities. We saw clashes between Hindus and Muslims in Leicester, for example, or anti-Semitic incidents carried out by men of Middle Eastern appearance in London. My point here is that just because we see religious incidents going up, that does not necessarily mean that hate-filled, lager-swilling, gammony-faced white men are shouting at Muslims in the street. It does make me laugh when there's a protest about a migrant hotel and anti-fascists or the Refugees Welcome Brigade, they bust themselves in from somewhere miles away to be confronted by the reality of the situation, which is usually just a few locals, one bloke called Colin and his wife, and the people who have lost their jobs at that hotel to make way for the Channel migrants, who are just a bit worried about the situation. They tend to be the ones bringing the hate, not Colin and co. Even when it comes to people's political beliefs, we're tolerant. Look at arch Remainer Steve Bray. I mean, he literally spends his time shouting abuse at people through a megaphone or turning up at events and heckling people. And to my knowledge, I don't think anyone's ever actually beaten him up, have they? And rightly so. There will be loads of people who are actually really disappointed at these hate crime figures because they are race-baiting grifters who thrive off the cottage industry of stoking racial tensions in this country and portraying it as an awful place. Yes, there are issues. There are genuine racists and bigots out there, but they are in decline. Actually, Britain is bloody lovely. It always has been, and it always will be. Well, let's get the thoughts of my panel. I have got Daily Telegraph columnist Alison Pearson. I've got Conservative peer Lord Bailey. I've got author and broadcaster Amy Nicole Turner. Alison, I'll start with you on this. These hate crime figures, for me, prove what I think a lot of people are saying, which is that actually we are not a hateful and racist nation.
We're certainly not, Patrick, and all the international surveys, big international surveys, say we're one of the most tolerant countries in the world, often coming in the top two for gay people and for immigrants. And I thought one of the loveliest parts of Rishi Sunak's speech at the conference, where he said, "Not only am I proud to be the first British Asian Prime Minister, I'm proud that that wasn't a big deal." That's absolutely true. In America, that would have been the story. The story is now people look at Rishi and think, can't you get trousers?
Well, it was the story, because Joe Biden, after calling him Rashid Sunak, then said, "I'm the Conservative Party. Who'd have thought?" before shuffling off stage the wrong way and, you know, I don't know, getting a dress.
But you're right. I think there are, you know, on the left, a lot of people who want to say this is a hateful, institutionally racist country. What I would say about the rise in transphobia, talking to trans women this past week, is that they think that the agitators, the political agitators, the Stonewall, are stirring up aggression, politically motivated aggression, which is making their lives very unpleasant.
Okay.
They want to live quietly, they want to fit in, they do not want these aggressive people making trans their cause.
Aggressive people like our very Prime Minister, who stood up at conference and
said
used
that women are women.
trans people as a weapon.
How?
No.
OK, go on.
By saying a man is a man and a woman is a woman is inferring that trans women are not women. It is. And when Mark Harper was asked to qualify it because it was potentially against the law to say as much, he tried to distinguish between sex and gender. But he was speaking about gender, wasn't he?
But also, so what? I'm sorry, but so what if he says that a man is a man and a woman is a woman? I mean, that is literally
inalienable scientific
biological fact. So if my point with this, Amy, which I think you might have emphasised, is if we're classing that kind of language as a transphobic hate crime, then the 11% increase in transphobia, I just don't think exists.
No, but what I would say is things like what the Prime Minister said at conference, supported by an applauding crowd, emboldens
many of them women.
But you said it was potentially against the law.
The Equalities Act says there's protected belief, a characteristic, that if you are transitioning, you are the gender that you say you are, not necessarily the sex you were assigned at birth. And Rishi Sunak has known this, and people...
OK, so to answer this question then, was that transphobic?
No, I don't think that was transphobic, but I think it definitely emboldened transphobia, and it definitely gave invitation.
It reflected the views of the vast majority of the country.
Lord Bailey.
Here's the deal. The good thing about these figures is that they are going down. The worrying thing about these figures is that they've taken so much time, so much police time to collate. What's shocking about these figures is that if you say something to me, Amy can report it as a hate crime, even if the recipient myself doesn't see it as a hate crime. That's where the problem lies, because the problem here is, the worry is, we then stray into, groupthink. We then say, you have the wrong thought process. People have made it quite clear in this country. They want the police to chase people down the road, not chase them down Twitter. And the core of a free society is the ability to offend, because if you can't offend, who gets to decide what's offensive or not?
But I think this makes it even more impressive that the figures are going down, because we live in a society now where everybody's offended by everything, and you call the police, and the police take it super serious when they say, oh, so-and-so was offended by hurty words, and they record that, and still, Alison, still the numbers are going down.
I think what happens, Patrick, is I think people think we get on, we rub along very well. The surveys show the majority of British people very happy to live next door to someone from a different ethnicity. And then they're hearing from the television, oh, we're all hateful.
Exactly.
I think people start thinking, hang on a minute, we're not. And actually, that is what causes people to be cross, is they think, who are you calling racist, when we're actually getting along quite well with people?
It sets back. If you were born in this country, I was born in this country, born in 71, and racism was way more prevalent then than it is now, and it's disrespectful to suggest we're a racist, horrible country, because we've made a lot of progress. And there's lots of people who've had to change their ways, there's lots of people who've had to fight for that change. They will be offended by the fact that people are not acknowledging that we are improving and moving forward as a society.
I mean, do you think some people genuinely, I'm not saying you necessarily, but some people on your side of the political spectrum will be really disappointed in these figures, because it might even put them out of a job?
I think that any hate crime is one too many, surely. And if we look at, say, race, there are still massive discrepancies that are evidenced by statistics, where black women are 4 times more likely to die in childbirth. Black men are double as likely to be unemployed in the UK. There is problems with racism, so I don't think we don't need to use these types of
racism and hate crime are two different things. So what Amy's just done is collate two issues and then to give validity to a point on a separate issue. That's not fair.
But that's exactly what Patrick's just done in his monologue.
But that's not fair. That's not fair. Racism is one particular thing. Hate crimes are other. You can have hate crimes with things that have nothing to do with racism. And what people on the left have regularly done is conflate real issues with fake issues in order to push that issue along. And I think people need to be aware of that. Let's talk about hate crime in the context of hate crime. And I'd say the other side of that coin, we're now making banter, we're now making discourse between people illegal. And that really needs to be looked at, because that is the beginning of the end of free speech.
Absolutely.
You're going off the language side of things there, and there's even very, very concerning incidents, by the way, of people that appear to be very willing to even police what you could and couldn't say in your own home, which I find astonishing. Yeah. One thing I would wonder now, though, if we do move towards a multicultural society that is predominantly working and we're all rubbing along rather nicely and things, is there any need going forward for things like positive discrimination, do you think?
I think that is a real double-edged sword. And again, you've got the National Health Service, for example, probably one of the most diverse workforces in the world, let alone the country, over 1.5 million people, and now employing more diversity and equity officers when they should be spending that money on... Everybody wants that money spent on the front line, on nurses and doctors. So I think it's become an obsession, and I think in lots of cases now it's extremely counterproductive. We've had emails from people saying, in my hospital, if you were white and male, you wouldn't even be considered for a job. That breeds unhappiness and discontent.
Amy, are we or are we not one of the best countries in the world when it comes to this stuff?
I think we are pretty good, but there's always room for improvement. So let us not take our eye off the ball.
You know what? I don't mind that attitude at all. I do quite like it, because we should always strive for perfection. My beef, really, short, is, Lord Bailey, is when we spin these figures like these to make it deliberately over negative.
Listen, you're doing it deliberately over positive.
I'll go to where Kemi Badesnet went. She said this is the best place in the world to live as a black person, and she is correct. Nowhere else in the world are they having a debate around, how can we progress entire black communities in equitable ways. We are wringing our hands, and whilst we're wringing our hands, we should also pay attention to the fact that we are doing reasonably well. Of course, we could do better, but we are doing well. And if you compare us to anybody else, we are light years ahead. We look at America as where we're going. On race, I hope not.
They're completely different.
Exactly, but the point
don't
is,
get ahead of
people compare
yourself
us.
and think that we live in a post-racial society, because we don't, and that's why we can't get overexcited.
I tell you why we don't live in a
otherwise
post-racial society, because of people on the left. People on the left keep talking about multiculturalism. Multiculturalism is part of the problem. What we should be looking at is a multiracial society. If you have a multicultural society, you're going to have to rank people.
You know what
you're
cracked me up, honestly,
cultures.
seriously, was David Lammy, actually. He was talking about, I don't recognise what Suella Braverman's saying about these issues with multiculturalism and all of that stuff, but then would be the first to bang the drum when it comes to, you know, issues in society, inequalities in society, communities not doing well, living with each other, us needing to do more with it. And I thought the only reason people are coming out and saying this is because a Conservative has said it, actually, and that, for me, completely exposed it, because you can't have it both ways. You can't say that, you know, we are horrible and the Tories are awful, but then slate a Tory MP or a Home Secretary when they say multiculturalism has failed. Like, you just can't have it both ways.
But you have a situation where the left will say, oh, dreadful, misogyny, sexism. There are communities, sadly, in our country where young girls and women are prevented by men from fully participating in education, further education. That is a fact, and the left keep very quiet about that, Patrick, don't they? Because it doesn't suit the agenda.
OK, all right, there we go. But I will say, as Amy rightly says, we still have work to do. We shouldn't rest on our laurels, but I do think we should be, you know, good about the positives as well. Still to come, Richie's plan to permanently stub out cigarettes was slammed as illiberal and anti-conservative by some within the party. But it's one of a number of different things going on. Banning things. We need to ban. We don't like it. Ban it. Ban it. Why? Why? Just stop. Live and let live. And tonight, I am joined by top journalist Cara Kennedy, who will be on to explain why Rishi's prohibition plan is facing such a backlash. But up next in the clash, Caroline Lucas has accused the Tories of a dishonesty epidemic. But should it really be a criminal offence for politicians to lie? I mean, can it really be? Seriously, how do you enforce that? I mean, I did enjoy an old show that involved a lie detector test and a DNA test, but surely we can't bring that back. That's the extreme action some MPs want taken, and Niall Gardner and Jenny Barner will have their say, and that is coming your way in just a tick.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Monday to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
Join me, Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner, Monday to Thursday, 9:30am.
Who benefits from that? Not the British public.
And on Fridays, join us, Tom Harwood
and Ellie Costello from Britain's Newsroom.
That's what you get with this show, that's fantastic.
If it's happening, we're talking about it on Britain's Newsroom.
GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute. Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christie's, at drive time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christys, on GB News and GB News Radio.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real, robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
The Live Desk with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Pip Thompson. It's here Monday to Friday on GB News.
From midday, we'll bring you the news as it breaks, whenever it's happening and wherever it's happening, from across the UK and around the world.
Refreshing, feisty, but with a bit of fun too.
If it matters to you, we'll have it covered on TV, radio and online.
Join the Live Desk on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Stay locked and loaded, because Anne Widdecombe and Calvin Mackenzie are standing by. But now it's time for the clash. So, Green MP Caroline Lucas has claimed that the Conservative Party is infected by a dishonesty epidemic after accusations that ministers lied during conference speeches and interviews. Energy Secretary Claire Coutinho, who claimed that Labour is relaxed about taxing meat, Mark Harper's speech railing against 15-minute cities, they've been singled out for criticism by the left. Lucas told Sky News if the Prime Minister isn't acquainted with the 7 Nolan principles of public life, grief, have a day off, Caroline. Anyway, including that holders of public office should be truthful, then he shouldn't be in public life at all. Lucas is one of several MPs who support a bill that would make it a criminal offence for politicians to deliberately lie. But what do you think? Should it be a criminal offence for politicians to deliberately lie? Now, to debate this, I am joined by social commentator and actress, the wonderful Jenny Barnett, and former aide to Margaret Thatcher, Niall Gardner. Thank you very much, both of you. It's always ladies first. So, Jenny, I will start with you. Should they be jailed for lying? Should they be prosecuted for lying, MP? Wouldn't have any left.
You said it. I think that given that they represent us as a nation, they are our elected representatives. If they lie, it trickles down. We don't know what the truth is. We watch it in America. We see Trump decrying anything that's truthful, calling it fake news, and it's happening over here. No, we're not going to ban meat. No, we don't want 7 dustbins for every people. No, we don't want this and that. If they lie, what happens to the rest? Corrupts. Absolute power corrupts. Absolutely.
OK, but I mean, Niall, we've seen this ridiculous, farcical situation of time and taxpayers' money being wasted, dragging Boris Johnson through a kangaroo court. We're going to have that every week in this situation, aren't we?
Yeah, Patrick, thanks for having me on the show today. And certainly my view is that the calls from Caroline Lucas to make lying a criminal offence by MPs, I mean, this is absolutely ridiculous. After all, the left, I think, lie all the time. You look at Project Fear, the endless lies about the supposed impact of Brexit coming from left-wing politicians. And so there's a huge amount of hypocrisy that comes from the left when they call for this. Also, it's very Orwellian, in my view, to call for investigations into what MPs are saying, whether or not it's the truth. Who decides that? And so I do think that this is a ludicrous call from the left, who are, of course, as guilty as anyone of making endless lies. And we saw that especially during the Brexit campaign with Project Fear.
I mean, Jenny, the thing is, with stuff like this, it could backfire quite easily, where every single politician is done for lying because they haven't stuck to a manifesto pledge.
Listen, I would just like to go back, Neil, to you talking about the 23rd, when we voted to leave. On the side of a bus, it said £350 million that was taken every week was going to go into the NHS. That was a lie. And I think whether you're left or whether you're right, we, the populace that vote them in to represent us, have to be told the truth. Otherwise, we're swimming around in a sea of deceit. We don't know what's going on.
Look, I can understand exactly what you're saying, but I will, Niall, say, should the Greens especially not be worried what they wish for here? Because there's a lot of misinformation flying around about the need, the urgent, pressing need for net zero. A lot of climate alarmism taking place there. And I do worry that Caroline might find herself, frankly, in a prison cell.
Yeah, I think that all of these claims from the left about, you know, the climate alarmism and so on, and underestimating, for example, the costs of net zero. I mean, it's a disgrace. I think the propaganda coming from the left and outright lies and disinformation coming from the left on so many fronts. The reality is that net zero will be vastly expensive, and it could well bankrupt actually the British economy. But you're not going to hear that from the Green Party or for the leftists, who are now claiming that the Conservatives are lying on various fronts. So the hypocrisy here is absolutely staggering, I have to say, Jenny. Huge hypocrisy.
Niall, we had a prime minister. We had a prime minister that when he opened his mouth, he just spoke untruths. Now, the fool that I am, believed him until it was proven that he was lying. Now, you're not allowed to call anybody a liar in government. What do we do? Who do we turn to? Who is telling the truth? There's your truth.
Who are you
there's
talking about, Jenny? Who are you referencing? And what evidence do you...
Good old Mr. Boris Johnson, who runs away. There he is. There's the boy who feeds us fibs.
I'll tell you what is interesting with that, Jenny, because, right, it is obviously not a unusual view amongst the public, maybe not with a lot of GBNews viewers, etc. It's not an unusual view amongst the public that Boris Johnson was lying a bit about Partygate or all of that stuff, right? But when it came down, Niall, to some messages and to whether or not he'd caught a glimpse out of his eye about whether or not he'd seen a party and going upstairs, what they did him for was what they had to decide, based on their own merit, what he thought was going on in his own mind at that time. That is so subjective. Do I really want MPs to be subjected to the political views of anybody at any moment in time to go, I think you were really thinking this, and therefore you're a liar, and you're going to face prosecution? That is open to all sorts of problems.
Yeah, great points, Patrick. I do think the treatment of Boris Johnson was an absolute disgrace. Democratically elected Prime Minister, removed by a kangaroo court, in effect. And I do think the treatment of Boris was absolutely shameful. And I think it was a dark day in British history here. And I think the points you make are absolutely
Jenny,
right.
Jenny, we've seen some examples. One very egregious example, by the way, against Nigel Farage, of MPs standing up in Parliament and using parliamentary privilege to perpetuate what actually turned out to be completely false conspiracy theories that some other people ended up paying quite a lot of money for, actually. So it's not really just a right or a left issue, this, really. I do think that there appears to be an idea that we're going to do this because then we stop the Tory liars. But then I think, well, all right, but there's just as many a year as well, you know?
I think that if somebody decides to become a politician, we secretly vote in a box, in a ballot, and we ask somebody to be our mouthpiece. Back in Greece, when they decided to do it for the populace, we should be doing it now. What strikes me is that our political system is muddied and sullied, and none of us trust. And when we're looking at the further generation, the next generation coming down the line, I mean, I've had my day. Who do they listen to? Who tells them the truth? What is the truth? Whether it's on television, whether it's on the radio.
But people sometimes...
and it worries me.
Jenny, sometimes people don't want to hear the truth, Jenny. Sometimes people don't want to hear the truth. If we honestly live in a world now where, genitalia is not enough to define what sex you are, we live arguably in a post-truth era, Niall. I mean, who defines the truth?
Yeah, that's a good point here. And I have to, I have to say here that, these calls from the left to define the truth are sinister and nefarious and dangerous, actually. And it's designed to inhibit also, I think, freedom of speech. And we cannot go down that path where you have left-wing politicians defining what they believe is the truth.
Listen, I will quote Jesus Christ, and he said,
right, strong a second, strap yourselves in, lads. There we go. Right.
Unto thyself be true. Listen, unto thyself be true. We have to have a conscience, and people who listen to politicians have to trust what's coming out of their mouth, and I don't.
Right, Jenny, do you think that left-wing politicians are inherently more truthful than right-wing politicians, Jenny?
That's a great question, and I can't answer that. I only know a few that are on the very far left, and I became what I became because they told me a truth. When Wedgie Ben stood up and did what he did, and back in the day when I was growing up, I now get confused when people are protecting themselves and protecting positions that don't help anybody.
OK, Niall, same question to you.
Patrick.
Yeah, come
on. Yeah, Patrick, a quick point about that. So I'm actually here in Washington, D.C. at the moment. Of course, we have the Biden presidency in office. Joe Biden is a left-wing politician, the most powerful left-wing leader in the world. He lies all the time. I mean, he lies about his own past, his own record.
Yeah,
and I think, you know, that's clear proof, frankly, that left-wing politicians don't necessarily tell the truth. And just look at how Biden is running, ruining and destroying the United States. And the endless lies that he tells.
And Trump isn't. Trump is a truth teller, is he?
Right. OK, I tell you what.
Well, Trump's not in power at the moment. Joe Biden's running the country.
I'm blowing the full-time whistle. I'm blowing the full-time whistle. Both of you. Thank you very, very much. That is why we call it the Clash, people. God, good stuff. OK, fantastic. Now, that was the wonderful social commentator and actress Jenny Barnett and former aide to Margaret Thatcher, Niall Gardner. Have a bit of that, eh? So... there we go. I believe that we've been asking some of you. We have indeed, and some of you have been reaching out. Ben on Twitter says this. If it was illegal for MPs to lie, then all our jails would be overwhelmed. None of our politicians can be trusted. It's bleak, but possibly accurate. David on Twitter says, sadly, this would only make the state of politics worse. Politicians would only say things so vague that nobody could ever accuse them of anything illegal. You know what, David? I agree with you, and I actually really do think that massively increased media scrutiny, whilst in the round a good thing in politics, because you hold people to account, etc. I mean, I make a living off it, so great. But I think it's made politicians worse. I think it's made people more afraid to go into politics. I think it's also meant that you get these sound bites, don't you? Brexit means Brexit. Well, that by definition means nothing. They just speak to you in slogans because they're too afraid of saying anything that people might jump on. So, yeah, no, I agree with you. Now, Starmer has started doing stuff like that already, hasn't he? But Rory on Twitter says manifestos should be legally binding contracts with the British people, and if politicians renege on their pledges, they should be taken to court like all other fraudsters. I suppose the argument against that, not that I disagree with you, Rory, but I suppose the argument against that would be they're taken to court at the next election. Well, in practice, that's not really how it works, because they'll just lie again, won't they? But your verdict is in. 83% of you agree that it should be a criminal offence for politicians to lie. I love this. 17% of you say that it shouldn't. Look, fine. 83% of you, that is remarkable, but we will be here all day. I long for a future. You know what I would like? And I've pitched this idea, I don't want anyone to nick it now, where I interview politicians who are strapped to a lie detector test, and I ask them a whole host of questions. That would rate. Coming up, Rishi Sunak has sealed a new deal with the EU's border agency. I'll start by asking him if he thinks this will work, but there we go. He's going to get tough on illegal migration, but can we really count on the support of our European neighbours? Or do we need to take tougher action? You decide. Former Conservative Minister Anne Widdecombe weighs in later tonight. But next, Rishi described his plan to permanently stub out cigarettes as the right thing for our kids. But Cara Kennedy joins me to explain why Rishi's plan is illiberal and anti-conservative. But it's not just about the cigs. Statues, cars, adverts that involve junk food, which includes cheese, they're all getting banned. Why aren't we banning things? Leave us alone. See you in a tip.
The Live Desk with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Pip Thompson. It's here Monday to Friday on GB News.
From midday, we'll bring you the news as it breaks, whenever it's happening and wherever it's happening, from across the UK and around the world.
Refreshing, feisty, but with a bit of fun too.
If it matters to you, we'll have it covered on TV, radio and online.
Join the Live Desk on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows.
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. That's Mark Dolan Tonight, Friday, Saturday and Sunday from 9. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Anne Widdecombe's coming up very soon, but after announcing his plan to phase out the sale of cigarettes yesterday, Rishi Sunak is facing a furious backlash. Stay tuned because this is not just about smokers, OK? This is about authoritarianism, with campaigners slamming the policy as illiberal, anti-conservative, amid warnings that it could cost the economy a whopping £10 billion. Former Prime Minister Liz Truss looks set to vote against the smoking ban when it reaches Parliament. By the way, it's also just a ridiculous thing to do politically because there are no votes in this. No one that I know, I dare say no one that you know, is going to walk into a polling booth at the next election and with everything else that's going on in this country go, I'm going to vote for the party that's going to ban smoking. No, why? But despite the growing rebellion, Rishi Sunak was out defending his policy on BBC's Today programme this morning. Listen.
There's no safe level of smoking. Can't be part of a balanced diet. It's also obviously highly addictive, and it is responsible for 1 in 4 cancer deaths in our country. It kills 64,000 people a year. It's the single biggest preventable cause of death, disability and illness that we see, and it puts monumental pressure on the NHS.
Right, well, journalist and writer Cara Kennedy joins me now. Cara, look, is Sunak's smoking ban anti-conservative? Is Truss right to vote against it? Should we just stop banning things?
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to say something that I don't often say, but Liz Truss is absolutely right. I'm confused about who this policy is even for. It's definitely not for kids, because kids aren't smoking. We're down to about 3% compared to 35% a few decades ago. And any dyed-in-the-wool conservative would and does believe that this is a profoundly unconservative thing to legislate against.
OK, and we will be confronted by the completely farcical situation in a few years' time of a 40-year-old man begging a 41-year-old man outside a spa in Basingstoke to go in and buy him a pack of Marlboro Golds. I mean, that's clown world.
Yeah, I mean, and this isn't even about children, because these 14-year-olds, which is who it will affect, will become fully grown adults, like you just said, middle-aged people and then old people, and still won't have the autonomy to decide what they would like to do with their own bodies. It makes me laugh that this is the hill that the Prime Minister is willing to die on, when young people are crying out for government intervention with things like housing, cost of living.
So true.
And this is the issue that Rishi's going to push.
Look, so true, right? So we are being told now, and by the way, can I just say, I know smoking's bad. I know that it does clog up the NHS. There are a lot of other things that clog up the NHS, by the way, as well. So it's not just smoking. So I get all of this. I'm not advising it, all right? I need to stop myself. I know this.
I just tried to smoke on TV right now and was told that I couldn't because of Ofcom. So
can't do it. No, absolutely, absolutely. Half of the ideas I have for shows like this are against the law. but you can't possibly tell me that a 6-year-old is able to make a decision about what gender they are, right? And that an 18-year-old is not capable of making a decision to walk into a corner shop, look at a blank packet of cigarettes, apart from a picture on it, that's got a charred lung, and decide that they want to have that. We can't have it both ways.
Yeah, I mean, this is insane overreach. And I also question why smoking is the thing to get involved in when nobody really even smokes anymore.
No.
There are 250,000 people on our streets taking heroin, 1.5 million smoking cannabis every day.
Yeah.
And a social cigarette is the thing that Rishi Sunak wants to focus his campaign on.
Look, you know, we've banned things already, yeah? We've banned knife crime, OK? We've banned illegal immigration, yeah? How are we doing with those things? Not very well. I wonder whether or not the public would rather we focused on them.
Yeah, exactly. And anytime you ban anything, all you do is create an underground market for the exact thing you ban anyway. I mean, the prohibition of drinking and smoking is going to end in, obviously, a black market for smoking and drinking. And all it takes in this case is for a younger person to ask somebody who's slightly older to go into the shop for them.
Yeah, look, I don't think it's any wonder why we are creating, and I think have created, a generation of helpless, easily offended idiots. Because, you know, you look at this and you go, well, they have to have that choice removed from them because they can't be trusted. And then we wonder why we end up with 17 and 18-year-olds just wandering around going, someone needs to help me. I can't look at this. I'm so offended. I can't see I can't see a picture of a burger on the London Underground, because if I do, I'll deliberately give myself diabetes. You know, it's bonkers. We're infantilising people. But Cara, thank you very much. And well done for not smoking on national television, because that apparently will be the end of the world. Cara Kennedy there, the wonderful one. Now, coming up, Culture Secretary Lucy Fraser wants to save our statues and take on those who want to erase our history. But with a crisis-hit NHS trust offering slavery reparations, are we too obsessed with apologising for our past to build a brighter future? My panel will debate that a little bit later on, but right now, well, in just a sec, Rishi Sunak has sealed a new deal with the EU's border agency to get tough on illegal migration. But is he right to trust our European nations? Will it make a blind bit of difference? Why won't he just turn the boats back? Do we need to take serious action? Former Conservative Minister Anne Widdecombe weighs in, and that is next.
Join me, Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner, Monday to Thursday, 9:30am.
Who benefits from that? Not the British public.
And on Fridays, join us, Tom Harwood
And Ellie Costello from Britain's Newsroom.
That's what you get with this show. That's fantastic.
If it's happening, we're talking about it on Britain's Newsroom.
GB News, Britain's news channel.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7pm.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
Delicious.
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train.
Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa! Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it. So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There'll be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11am on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute. Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christie's, at drive time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app, and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christie's, on GB News and GB News Radio.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows.
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. That's Mark Dolan Tonight, Friday, Saturday and Sunday from 9. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Fleet Street legend Kelvin Mackenzie is coming up later tonight, but first I'm joined by former Conservative Minister Anne Widdecombe, and Rishi Sunak attended an EU summit in Grenada today to demand European leaders follow Britain's tough action on illegal migration. The Prime Minister will highlight to the European political community his efforts to crack down on small boat crossings in the English Channel. But there's already been tensions between those attending because the Spanish hosts refused to put migration on the official agenda for the meeting, which sums it up, doesn't it? Sums it up. Oh, great, we've gone to Spain, we've got some EU cooperation with a group of people who didn't want to talk about it in the first place. Anne joins me now. Can we count on the support of our European neighbours, Anne?
Well, of course we can't, and we've already had solid proof of that. We had it with France. I mean, we have given France millions, and what do? Absolutely nothing. And, you know, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. And the reason that Rishi Sunak does this and is relying on the EU to sort out Britain's problems is because he has no solution. He has done absolutely nothing. Now, he and Suella have talked a great deal. They've talked about what they're going to do. I mean, I support Rwanda, but, you know, the Prime Minister doesn't seem to have any means of speeding that up. Meanwhile, they haven't done what they should have done, which is to get the asylum seekers out of hotels and into secure accommodation. Haven't done that. They haven't done any of the deterrent things which would have actually made people less likely to want to come here. They've done none of them.
OK. I mean, look, he'll obviously say, yeah, we've tried. I think boat crossings is down 20%. I know a lot of people say that's down to the weather, so we'll have to wait and see. But crucially, if you stand on a ticket of stop the boats, and there are still boats coming, that's a problem. And they're talking about working with Frontex, which is actually really what Labour want to do as well. So I think he's sucked the wind out of their sails a little bit ahead of their Labour Party conference. But forgive me, Anne, you want to work with an organisation to help share intelligence. They aren't cracking down on human traffickers either. So what's going to change?
Nothing. Absolutely nothing is going to change. And to suggest that he's taken the wind out of Starmer's sails, well, frankly, no, because the public won't be any more impressed by Starmer talking about relying on France and cooperation with the EU than they are with Rishi doing it. I don't know why he is wasting his time. He should be doing one thing, and he should be saying, how do we deter people from coming? And the only way you're going to do that is through a combination of automatic detention, offshore processing, and the removal of the ability to claim asylum if you come illegally.
Or you could also be honest about something, which is that if you do come to this country and you do have a procession of lawyers who are willing to, in some cases, lie about the calibre of your asylum claim, and we do find it difficult to deport you, once you get accepted, you'll have 28 days to leave this hotel, and then you will be homeless, because we don't have any homes. So if you want to live on the streets of Britain, then come. But if you don't, maybe France starts to look all right again, Em.
I don't actually think that would work. I mean, I think they would find ways around that. I mean, after all, how is it that they come here and they disappear when their claim is about to be refused? They manage to keep themselves, they manage to work, they go into the underground economy. I don't think that is the solution. I think the solution is to deter them from coming in the first place. And the other solution, of course, is to make some effort to actually turn back the boats, which is what Australia. We don't do that.
But it takes someone who's very brave, Anne, because, you know, look, you're one death away from all of the headlines being, you know, you're a murderer and you're this, that and the other. And again, you know, that doesn't curry much favour with me. I don't want to see anyone die in the channel, of course not. But then you have to think, well, are we the murderers for turning the boats back if somebody does happen to unfortunately die? Or is that the human traffickers? Is that the people who've willingly gone across the busiest shipping lane in the world? It's an unpalatable thing to say, but no politician wants to be the person who is accused of killing people in the channel, do they?
No, and nor will I. But that's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying that the Navy should, you know, force the boats back and nudge them back into French waters. I'm saying that they should do what they would do with any other boat illegally entering our waters, which is to stop them, turn them round and back.
OK.
That's
I think I've just about got time for another little one with you, OK? So the Governor of the Bank of England has championed the opportunities created by Brexit, saying it has protected Britain from global economic headwinds. Andrew Bailey suggested Britain has fought off pretty dire warnings from economists and so-called experts after leaving the European Union. So does this prove that those doom-mongering Remainer economists and so-called experts were wrong, Anne?
Oh, yes, and Andrew Bailey was pretty doom-mongering himself. You know, he's never been a great proponent of Brexit. So if he's saying that it's opened up opportunities, it's going to be very difficult now for the miseries to go on saying that we should rejoin and we should abandon it. It has been a limited success because it hasn't been properly embraced and dealt with. But if we take those advantages, and if we trust people like Bailey, if we take those advantages, then yes, you know, we have a huge future.
Why we've never sought competitive advantage, Anne, is the thing. And the reason I'm cutting across you, I'm very sorry, is because we are bang out of time. It's the wonderful Anne Widdecombe there, former government minister. Now, coming up, ex-England manager Kevin Keegan has sparked outrage after saying that he doesn't like female pundits talking about the men's game. Is he wrong, or is he saying what most blokes are thinking? And are you wrong if you want football, male football, to be a space for men? England's most capped male footballer, Peter Shilton, takes on Lionesses legend Faye White. That's later, that's going to be massive. But next, Culture Secretary Lucy Fraser has vowed to save our statues and stand up to those who want to erase our history. But as a crisis hit NHS Trust offers slavery reparations, Are we too obsessed with apologising for our past to actually deal with the problems that we've got right now? I certainly think so. I'll be going to my panel, and that debate is next.
Hello again, it's Aidan McGivern here from the Met Office for the GB News forecast. Fine in the far south over the next 24 hours. A different story elsewhere. There will be cloud. There'll be outbreaks of rain as well. Not everywhere all the time, but some significant rain could build up in places by the weekend. Low pressure at the moment to the northwest of Scotland. A number of trailing weather fronts bringing a lot of cloud to the UK for the rest of Thursday and into Friday. Those outbreaks of rain continuing over parts of Wales into the Midlands, Northern England, Northern Ireland, southern Scotland. Initial band of rain clearing from the far north of Scotland, pushed away by a strong wind. And it's going to be a warm night everywhere with that wind and the cloud. Temperatures in many places not falling much below 15 degrees. Then we start off Friday with those cloudy conditions, the breezy conditions as well. Plenty of brightness actually for central and northern Scotland. A much better day compared with Thursday and certainly Saturday. But for much of Northern Ireland into southern Scotland later, as well as northern England, rain will persist through the day. It's to the south where we're going to see the warmth building and increasingly high temperatures through the weekend are expected. But for Scotland, certainly it's going to be a wet start to the weekend. That rain really building up through Saturday and the first part of Sunday. Western parts of Scotland at risk of seeing 150 millimetres of rainfall. A very different story for the rest of the UK, and certainly across the southern half of England and Wales, we'll see temperatures into the low to mid-20s.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner, Monday to Thursday, 9:30 a.m.
Who benefits from that? Not the British public.
And on Fridays, join us, Tom Harwood
and Ellie Costello from Britain's Newsroom.
That's what you get with this show. That's fantastic.
If it's happening, we're talking about it on Britain's Newsroom.
GB News, Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute. Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christie's, at drive time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christie's, on GB News and GB News Radio.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome along, wonderful people. It's 10 o'clock. I'm Patrick Christie's, and this is GB News Tonight. Now, Culture Secretary Lucy Fraser has pledged to save our statues and stand up to those who want to erase our history. But as a crisis hit NHS Trust offers slavery reparations, are we too obsessed with apologising for our past to build a brighter future? I think it's absolutely bonkers. My panel debate that next, and tonight I'm joined by the box office Alison Pearson, the fabulous Sean Bailey, and the fantastic Amy Nicole Turner. And that, my friends, is Lord Bailey to you. Plus, England football legends Peter Shilton and Faye White go head-to-head after Kevin Keegan's controversial admission that he doesn't like listening to ladies talking about the men's game. Is he playing wrong, or actually is he just saying what most men think? They will tackle that head-on. And Kelvin McKenzie, he's uncancelled. That's later on in the show. Tomorrow's front pages are mere moments away. I've had a little sneaky peek, and as ever, there's some absolute gold on the front page. But first, it's your headlines with Polly Middlehurst.
Patrick, thank you, and good evening to you. Well, our top story tonight is a man who broke into Windsor Castle armed with a loaded crossbow with the intent of killing the late Queen has been sentenced to 9 years in jail for the crime of treason. Jaswant Singh Chail wandered around inside the grounds for 2 hours on Christmas Day 2021 while the late Queen was in residence. Well, the Old Bailey heard today he'd been encouraged by an artificial intelligence virtual girlfriend with which he'd exchanged thousands of messages. The judge said Chail was non-psychotic and therefore culpable when he devised his plot, but had lost touch with reality and become psychotic by the time he carried it out. The coach driver in the Wirral bus crash has been described as having suffered an event at the wheel before the incident which killed both him and a 15-year-old girl, a coroner's court in Liverpool has heard today. CCTV footage from inside the coach showed the driver, David Shrimpton, suddenly slump to the left while he was driving. The coach then overturned. 54 people on the bus were taken from the bus on the M53 last Friday. Sir Keir Starmer has revealed an extra 700,000 urgent dental appointments would be introduced under a Labour government in plans to improve the nation's oral health. The party would also introduce supervised toothbrushing in schools across England in order to tackle preventable tooth decay in children. People in most need of treatment would be prioritised under proposals aimed at rescuing NHS dentistry. The plans would be financed, Labour says, by using £111 million a year from abolishing non-domiciled tax status. Now, news from overseas. We understand at least 51 people have died after a Russian missile hit a cafe in northeastern Ukraine. It's reported the victims were attending a funeral. Ukrainian officials called it a heinous crime. The attack was the deadliest in Kharkiv since the start of the war. And the Prime Minister has met with the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, saying Europe must face down the threat from Russia. Rishi Sunak is in Spain for the European Political Community Summit. The Prime Minister condemned today's attack and reiterated the UK's support for Ukraine in the ongoing war. And lastly, the Prince of Wales has joined some of England's World Cup-winning wheelchair rugby league squad today. She got stuck in as well at the event in Hull, where she actually sat in a wheelchair and gave the game a go. Kate, who's patron of the Rugby Football League, is there to help promote inclusivity in the sport, much to the delight of those taking part today. You're with GB News across the UK on TV, in your car, on digital radio and on your smart speaker by saying play GB News. This is Britain's news channel.
It's tomorrow's news tonight now in our Media Buzz. Let's kick off with the very first look at the front pages hot off the press. So the Metro leads with the trial of Ian Fitzgibbon, who has pleaded not guilty to the murder of Ashley Dale. The paper says that the 28-year-old was gunned down in her own home because her boyfriend humiliated a rival gang member at Glastonbury. Gosh, OK, so there we go. My panel are back with me now. Daily Telegraph columnist Alison Pearson. We've got Conservative peer Lord Sean Bailey and author and broadcaster Amy Nicole-Turner. Let's get stuck into this debate. I think there's going to be fireworks here because the Culture Secretary, Lucy Fraser, has been talking tough on those who want to erase our history by publishing new Retain and Explain guidance to protect controversial historical statues. Fraser's common-sense approach to Britain's history couldn't be more timely, as it was revealed yesterday that Scottish Health Board NHS Lothian will make reparations to Jamaica and Africa to, quote, make amends for its slavery links. We'll start with you, Alison, on this. Are we too obsessed with apologising for our past to build a brighter future?
I'm sure that the voters of Lothian will be delighted that their money, their taxpayers' money, is being sent in reparations when they can't get a doctor's appointment. So that just shows you how absolutely mad and disproportionate that is. I agree with Lucy Fraser. I think this is a very good initiative. She says it's infantile to remove memorials and statues, which, of course, are complex. I mean, how will people look, Patrick, in 100 years at us? I'm sure there'll be things they'll say.
I imagine it incredibly favourably. Yeah.
Well,
There'll be
maybe-
statues of me.
Maybe at you, but, you know, they'll maybe think the rest of us. So it's arrogance to judge the past like that. I think this retain and explain of statues, you know, if you've got a controversial statue, explain, you know, this person.
Can I ask a question, though? Because surely if you explain a lot of statues, you wouldn't want to retain.
Well, it depends what you...
Why?
So this
Why?
is-
No, I don't agree with that,
But
Amy.
this is where we are. So it depends what you choose on a little plaque to say about Churchill. Right, so do you go off on the Bengal famine, which is debatable anyway, or do you go off on winning World War II?
But the thing is, with a lot of these, so say with the Edward Colston statue, I think a lot of people in Bristol didn't quite understand the role that he played in the slave trade until it was explained, and then they no longer wanted to retain, because statues are innately celebratory,
Amy,
right?
No, they're not celebratory. They're part of our history. That happened. He was also a benefactor, just like with Cecil Rhodes in Oxford. That statue is very contested. Cecil Rhodes scholarships include bringing amazing people across the world to our country, including Bill Clinton. It's a mixed picture. You can't just say we're abolishing our history and just going to have statues of really nice people. How many are going to end up with?
No, one at a time, Sean.
But the real thing is, ask yourself why they want to eliminate these statues. What they want to do is change the nature of the country. Your history is important. It says who you are. Nobody ever said that Britain's history is perfect, but what people said was Britain's history is something to be proud of. And when somebody tells you how horrific our history is, let's say, well, let's compare it to everybody else's. Because there is no nation on the planet, no nation that has a spotless history. And if you take slavery, for instance, which I have a very vested interest in, there's more slavery now than there's ever been. And when people talk about slavery, yes, Britain was part of industrialising slavery, but it was also part of stopping slavery. So when this NHS Trust talks about paying reparations, there's two things I think they should bear in mind. A, the government should stop them from doing it, because they're giving public funds and it's not for that. If they want to pay it, we need to all do it.
Amy, who benefits, seriously, who benefits now about a plaque beneath a statue when we've got, you know, massive social problems in this country, we've got massive issues with the NHS, you know, are people going to be any healthier or any better off as a result of a plaque that goes, oh, by the way, this person had exactly the same views as everybody else in the 1800s?
But that's not the case for a lot of these people, is it? But can I just say about this NHS Trust that you can't get confused, because it's not taxpayer money that funded this. It's actually the charity money, so it's not. It's separate. It's the NHS Lothian charity rather than the taxpayer.
I hope so.
That's an important.
But hold on, here's the deal. They have that money because they have an organisation that is funded by public money.
Yeah, but it was after years of research consulting staff and members of the public. So this wasn't. This was based on the demand from within the NHS Trust.
There's a more serious issue here.
Yeah.
My two kids are in their 20s. They've grown up basically being told this is a bad country. And I have to sit at the kitchen table and say, yes, we were a colonial power, but guess what? Belgium was a worse colonial power. France, Portugal was a terrible colonial power. So as Sean said, everybody's got a very mixed history. We've got a lot to be proud of. And as you say, Patrick, quite right, that beautiful statue of Churchill in Westminster.
Which we had to box off so that idiots and potentially people intent on committing criminal damage didn't destroy the thing.
But statues are always used for protest. So think of the Little Mermaid in Denmark, is it? That is in Copenhagen. It's completely innocuous. It's about a fairy tale, yet it's regularly used in political protest. For a women's rights march, it had a vibrating apparatus attached to it. They're always going to be used in protest.
Do things differently in Denmark, don't they?
But the point...
They're just points of interest, aren't they? That's my point.
The other point is about statues. They're a representation of their time. So when you remove them, what you do is remove our ability to look at history then. And I think that's very important, because when you talk about this NHS Trust, if it's their own money, give away. But if it's collective money, a different conversation needs to be had. But again, I really want to understand, if you think you help black children, right, by removing British history, you're wrong. How does a black child know? Where do they learn it from? They see these things and the questions start. So if we're going to write these plaques, they need to be written with balance.
But we're not going to leave up the Jimmy Savile statue in Leeds. We whipped that one down.
Let's be clear.
When we explained, we did not retain, and I think that applies to a lot of statues.
Jimmy Savile never did anything to help this nation.
He did a lot for the NHS.
Yeah, we're talking about people who did significant things for the nation. Jimmy Savile, nobody's asking you to get rid of the statue, to keep the statue. But the most important thing, Jimmy Savile's now. He's not our history. He never built the nation.
But also we have no balance in it. So here, slavery, bad. we had the abolitionists.
Yeah.
The Royal Navy was out there fighting. The Arabs continued slavery until you could argue that the Arabs are still going on with their slavery, you know. So, again, there's a lot to be proud of, and I think it's like destroying the past, Patrick. It's very bad.
Yeah, I think, Amy, that people today who don't amount to much and haven't really got anything better to do are intent on destroying things of the past. They're trying to build a country in their own image, and that image often is a lazy mess.
Just don't celebrate things that don't deserve celebration. Move them into a museum.
Move them into, yeah, but then what do you? But then this is it. What do you replace them with? Because it's never just.
I know.
You end up replacing them with a statue
of Gary Lineker. Carol Vorderman.
Yeah, you put Gary Lineker and Carol
Chris
Vorderman.
Packham.
And Chris Packham. It'd be interesting, though, because if I didn't like that Chris Packham statue, would I be allowed to rip that down?
I tell you what, I'd rip the Carol Vorderman down in a heartbeat.
Yeah, and then presumably you wouldn't be getting done for criminal damage.
No, don't say that,
Sean. Sean Bailey would like to clarify that he's not going to rip anything down or commit any kind of criminal damage. But
the statue doesn't exist.
Yeah,
it doesn't exist.
That's true. Not yet, Sean. Give it time. Give it time. I'm telling you.
It will. And then we'll explain and retain, because that would be a worthy statue.
Well, I think we're infantilising people here. Seriously, I really do. You end up with we need to explain this. It's faux outrage. You know, we had things like, I think it was Black Boy Lane, didn't we, in Haringey, where they did a consultation. No one really cared about it. People even who were black, who lived on that road, didn't care about it. Then they had another consultation. Then they did it. Then they took it down again. All of this cost us money. Why are we paying for this?
No, it's, as you say, it's a world of spurious outrage when there's plenty to get genuinely upset about, isn't it? But I don't want my kids to be thinking that they live in a rotten country that's worse than other countries. Our history is very good, and we shouldn't be conflating it with the slavery experience in the United States, which is imported over here. That shouldn't be happening.
What good does it do to do that?
It does nothing. And look, a house divided against itself will fail. And all of these things point to the fact that to make up this false narrative that Britain is a horrible place, and that is not healthy for our children. No serious situation has grown from self-hatred.
You know what it is, Amy? Honestly, people's jobs depend on this stuff, right? There are people who have to justify a £100,000-200,000 a year salary in diversity and equality, and they have to look at things and be outraged and demand change. Otherwise, someone goes, "What's the point of you?"
That's just. We have a multicultural society. We need to cater for all the people in society. Who's best placed to do that? Someone that completely understands the individual experiences.
So if I saw a statue of Gandhi, right, which there is, Gandhi also did like some quite younger individuals, as well documented. He also wrote a letter to Mussolini praising him, praising people along with that political ideology. So next to Gandhi's statue, do I have to write, you know,
I'd like a little explainer. Give me an explainer, exactly. I want an informed, informed experience.
Nelson Mandela, you know, an unquestionably great figure, right? Unquestionably great figure, Nelson Mandela. Obviously, you know, at times there was violent action that was used to try to get their cause across, which was used by the group that he was involved in. So do we have that? Do we have that under Nelson Mandela?
What's really important is who gets to pick? This is the worry. This is the worry. Who gets to control what you think? Who gets to control what you know? And what's really important, I go back, it's an infantilisation. All this information exists. Everybody, there is no person on this planet, save my mum, who is perfect. There is nobody who's never done anything wrong, save my mum. So therefore, it's always going to be some kind of contention. And all these people are trying to do is make sure they get to push their version of the world on us.
Go on.
Just near me, a monument, lots of young American airmen, British airmen during the Second World War. The list of names goes on and on. How many of those would have had views that would have been approved of by these campaigners? Probably none of them. Were they amazing? They died for our country, Patrick. They did more than the complainers.
Looking at history through today's lens, looking at people's attitudes through today's lens, I find it. I'm just very uncomfortable with it.
But Edward Colston's statue was put up in that lens, and that lens was incorrect because it should never have been celebrated. He should never have been put up as this what do you call it, like absolute hero of Bristol.
We're not talking about
that was never true.
They're not all about heroes.
All right, OK, all right. Feisty start to this hour. We have started as we mean to go on. Coming up, as top Daily Telegraph columnist and my brilliant panellist, Alison Pearson, says that she's a Conservative but will not vote for them with Rishi Sunak at the helm. Really? Interesting. Should the party return to its right-wing roots and stand any hope of surviving? Well, Alison, we'll define that view as my panel battle it out a little bit later on. I want to know from you guys, would you vote? Are you a Tory that thinks that you won't vote Tory at the next election? And next, this is going to be good. Was ex-England manager Kevin Keegan wrong to say that he doesn't like female pundits talking about the men's game? England's most capped male footballer, Peter Shilton, takes on Lionesses legend Faye White, and that is coming up in just a sec.
The Live Desk with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Pip Thompson. It's here Monday to Friday on GB News.
From midday, we'll bring you the news as it breaks, whenever it's happening and wherever it's happening, from across the UK and around the world.
Refreshing, feisty, but with a bit of fun too.
If it matters to you, we'll have it covered on TV, radio and online.
Join the Live Desk on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real, robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows.
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. That's Mark Dolan Tonight, Friday, Saturday and Sunday from 9. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There'll be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m. Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Yeah, great story this. So, footballing legend Kevin Keegan has sparked outrage after saying he doesn't like listening to female pundits talk about the men's game. Speaking to about 250 people at an event in Bristol, the former England player and manager said, "I don't like to listen to ladies talking about the England men's team at the match because I don't think it's the same experience. I have a problem with that. The presenters we have now, some of the girls are so good, they are better than the guys. It's a great time for the ladies. But if I see an England lady footballer saying about England against Scotland at Wembley and she's saying, if I would have been in that position, I would have done this, I don't think it's quite the same. I don't think it crosses over that much." Obviously now there has been a massive backlash. The 72-year-old later clarified that it wasn't his intention to belittle women, but to react to this. Well, now I am joined by former England keeper Peter Shilton and the longest-serving female captain of England to date, Faye White. Thank you very much. Always ladies first. Faye, I've got to ask, you know, do you think he's got a point?
Well, he has his opinion. That's his opinion, isn't it? I mean, I've met Kevin Keegan a couple of times now, and one time was when he actually came when I was an England player and coached us when he was manager. And he spent the day with us and trained us. So obviously I wasn't in the room. I didn't hear the context of his remarks, but obviously everyone has an opinion. And obviously this has sparked some controversy. For me, yes, obviously the females wouldn't have played in a top-level men's game, but I've been on panels many a time where I've been on a Women's World Cup and have had a male present as a pundit to kind of give it credibility or to give it that kind of, well, it's proper now because we've got a male sat here commentating or having his opinion about it. For me, it just opens up the thing of, well, you know, if there's a top-class player, male player, but he's never played in a World Cup, does that mean he shouldn't really comment on a World Cup game? Or if there's a manager who never played at the top level, does that mean they can never go on to become a top-level manager in the men's game? So, it's obviously all about opinions, isn't it?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Peter, I'll throw it over to you now. Is there something to be said for the idea that men's football is like a place for men in society? And, you know, can we just have that or not?
No, of course not, Patrick. I think, you know, this day and age with equal opportunities in many things, you know, women and men come together so much. And, you know, I mean, I've always been a big supporter of the women's football, especially the last 5 or 6 years. Jill Scott, when she broke her caps record and, you know, the Euros and the World Cup, you know, women's football has improved dramatically, you know. I personally, you know, I can see what Kevin was getting at. I think it's been taken out of context. I mean, he's been described as a dinosaur. You know, I mean, he was managing Man City in 2005. So, you know, it's not that long ago. He's a man of big experience and managed England. And I think that basically, you know, what he's actually saying is that, you know, would women play against men in a men's game? No, they won't, because of obvious other things. And, you know, should a woman who's probably been at the top of her career in the last 4 or 5 years, you know, or in the women's game, obviously longer than that, but it's only just taken off, really, you know, be put in front of maybe somebody that's got, you know, 15 years experience of top-class international football. I think that's what he was trying to say, but obviously...
I think so. And look, I probably don't know Kevin anywhere near as well as you two do. I have met him, and for what it's worth, I thought he was an absolutely brilliant guy. I was just probably only about 10 years old, and he just did a coaching day, and he was lovely. You know, had all the time in the world for people when he was managing Manchester City, actually. Faye, do you think that there is there any tokenism, do you think? So when you see sometimes a footballing panel and it's about, you know, the men's side of the game, do you think that sometimes they lob a woman in there so it looks better?
I think in the past, certainly, but I think now we've got top female players who have gone on and won a European Championship. And for the last 10 years, we've been getting to the latter stages of major tournaments. But I think it's just a general problem in society that women's football is very much, competing always against the men. It's always looked at as being kept downgraded. But it's just with team sports, I think that happens more for female sports, whereas you've likes of athletics, tennis, these kind of comments, just don't seem to cross over or happen. You've got Navratilova beat Billie Jean King, who would be commenting on the men's tennis games, and that never gets questioned, or Paula Radcliffe commentating on a London men's marathon race, and that never gets commented. So it's just this thing around football, and obviously it's such a male-dominated for history and for time, and obviously the women's game it's been going on for a lot longer than just the last few years, but that's what everyone and the general public see because now it's captured in the media. So yes, we're playing a lot of catch up, and then it's still about forming and changing people's perceptions. I mean, my whole career, it was based about, getting the right to play and change that perception of it's just not suitable for women, and then getting it out, in the mainstream, getting more young girls playing, etc. So it is unfortunately that women's football, and obviously it's a barrier when women are trying to commentate and be a pundit. There's obviously lots of presenters that are female, and that's not an issue so much, and it hasn't been for many a year. But it's just that level of, well, what does she know? She wouldn't have played in the game. But that's my point, going back to my point earlier of when a top male player in the Premiership is talking about international, whereas yet they haven't even been an international, but that would never be picked up. So it is often brought down to, it's because she's female, how does she know?
It's a good point.
That you can't question the dynamic of people wanting to support the game is changing. Females are passionate about the game. We have some of us have a big knowledge in it and experience in it, and it's just changing people's
I'm just going to bring Peter in because we're slightly running out of time. Peter, do you think that blokes down the pub are wrong if they look at it and they go, kind of want a man commentating on this? Is that wrong, or do you think that's just like a bit of harmless pub talk?
It's everybody's opinion, isn't it? As was said earlier on, personally, I know Kevin very well, and I don't think he'd go out his way to make women's football, any less than what it is. I mean, they've won a European cup. We haven't done it, men. So for a long time. So there is that, but I think it comes down to experience. We're getting a lot of ladies coming on, females coming on very quickly, and I think I think you're bound to think, look, is this because they've been in the news recently and we've got to have this equal? Have they got the experience to talk about international football at men's level? That's just an opinion. I think that's all Kevin was trying to say. He felt that maybe it would be better with somebody else.
I think the important thing is because people are now, they're going for Kevin Keegan as a result of what he said. And Faye...
Yeah, well, that's the natural thing these days, Patrick, isn't it? Anybody that's a bit, sort of, like I say, saying anything against maybe equal opportunities, I think they're twisting it, really. I really do.
Do you want to... Look, Faye, do you... Final word to you on this. Do you want to see him cancelled for this and pilloried left, right and centre for his comments? So what's your, what do you want to see done?
No, not at all. I think, obviously, it sparks a debate in the media and nowadays, but I don't think people can be, when it comes to equality, just completely say, that's fine and, we have to go with it. If he has opinion, I have opinion that some commentators I don't enjoy. And, just because he's talking about a female, it shouldn't be jumped on his side. Like I said, I've met him, he trained with us, he spent a whole day, when I was in the team many a year ago now. So even then, and I really don't think it's in his personality to have meant it in that way, personally. Okay. But, I think it's just now the media, we obviously, anything about equality, they jump on it. But you just can't completely not say anything about it. It is his opinion. I have opinions where some commentators I like, some I don't. And I think, well, how do they know? They've not played at that level. I kind of see his point. But I think lots of people will feel it's because it's talking about a female. But I think he's looking at the higher end of him being a top international, having had that experience. He knows what it is like in that situation. And so I can see. I think,
Patrick, I just think that maybe, it's been sort of thrust at the normal football public, men in particular, that we've got to have women on the programme because of the Euros and that sort of thing. And it just seems that, it's the must. We've got to have this women on the programme to justify it. It's whether it's right or whether it's wrong. it comes down to experience and knowledge, really.
Oh, all right, look, both of you, thank you very much. We could talk about this all night. In fact, I wish I could, but unfortunately, it's not an overtly sports show, so I've got to move on. But lovely stuff. Thank you very, very much, both of you. As former England keeper there, Peter Shilton, and the longest-serving female captain of England to date, possibly forever as well, Faye White. Thank you very much, both of you. Great, that. Right, OK, loads more still to come. Coming up in Uncancelled, Fleet Street legend Calvin McKenzie. He tackles the big topics of the day. But next in our media buzz, as top Daily Telegraph columnist and GB News Tonight panellist Alison Pearson says she's a Conservative, but she won't vote for Rishi Sunak's government should the party return to its right-wing roots to stand up any hope whatsoever of surviving. Alison will defend that view, define what it is. We had an interesting chat in the break there. You're not going to want to miss this. I'll see you in just a tick.
Join me, Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner, Monday to Thursday, 9:30 a.m.
Who benefits from that? Not the British public.
And on Fridays, join us, Tom Harwood
and Ellie Costello from Britain's Newsroom.
That's what you get with this show. That's fantastic.
If it's happening, we're talking about it on Britain's Newsroom. GB News, Britain's news channel.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
Delicious.
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train.
Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa! Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it. So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There'll be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute. Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christie's, at drive time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christie's, on GB News and GB News Radio.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows.
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. That's Mark Dolan Tonight, Friday, Saturday and Sunday from 9. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back, winners. Let's return to tomorrow's news tonight in our media buzz. More front pages have just been delivered hot off the press. This is an interesting one, to say the least, actually. There we go. The Sun. Holly's kidnap plot terror is the headline, as they detail how a suspected plan to kidnap This Morning presenter Holly Willoughby was squashed by police. A 36-year-old man has been arrested. More on the media buzz now with tonight's panel. Daily Telegraph columnist Alison Pearson. We've got Conservative peer Lord Sean Bailey and author and broadcaster Amy Nicole Turner. So, Rishi Sunak used his keynote speech at the Tory party conference yesterday to outline 3 pledges that he thinks will transform the nation. Phasing out smoking, making kids study maths and English to 18, what? and the northern leg of HS2. There we go. But are those policies radical enough to convince the nation, true blue Conservatives, that Rishi is the man to fundamentally change the country? I'm sorry, but just leave that on the screen for a second. Now, I like Rishi. I think he's a nice guy, don't get me wrong. That is... I mean, it's not the most inspiring thing in the world, that, is it? Phase out smoking, children study maths and English to 18 years old, scrap the northern leg of HS2. Our very own Alison Pearson wasn't impressed. Writing in her Daily Telegraph column, which, by the way, is a must-read, I am a Conservative, but I'm done with this government. I mean, so what you really think, Alison? What's making you turn your back on the Tories, Alison?
Well, I'm not alone. I'm far from alone. So obviously I get thousands and thousands of emails. The Conservative base, we call them, Patrick, don't we, the Tory faithful. Not anymore. They are the Tory unfaithful. They are adulterous with the Conservative Party, and they want to see the Conservative Party punished for not being Conservative. So people voted with an open heart in 2019, gave them a fabulous majority, and what have they done with it? Skimmed milk Lib Dems, a lot of them, apart from a few people who we'll come to later. So there is massive disillusion, anger. We're going to see in a fortnight's time, we're going to have 2 by-elections in safe Tory seats. Let's see what the Conservative voters... What's happening is Conservative voters are staying home. They are refusing to vote for this. And those 3 things that Rishi Sunak said in his speech, if you asked any Conservative voter in the country, name your top 3 things that you'd like to have addressed, they wouldn't come into the top 25, would they?
I have a little theory, though, right?
Go on.
So Brexit changed things because it was Brexit that sparked the Red Wall vote because they wanted to get Brexit through. So previous UKIP voters turned to the Conservatives for the first time, giving them that massive majority.
Well, Nigel Farage stood to one side.
So now I believe...
Labour voters, Amy, lots of Labour voters...
But no, let me finish the point, let me finish the point.
Go on.
So they're so scared of losing that red wall that they're saying what they think the red wall voter wants to hear. They don't even believe these things.
I honestly don't think, even seriously, I mean, I would be surprised if even the most hardened, sheltered political advisor fundamentally misunderstood the red wall enough to think, you know what's going to get? Maths and English.
There's a couple
Come
things
on,
to
Sean,
say.
defend them. Come on.
The first thing to say, Alison is right. There's a lot of disillusion amongst Tory voters, and I'd argue it is growing worse. There's one thing I will say that I thought was serious on the list of 3, and that was about, HS2. Because what HS2 is a signal to those red wall seats that they have not been forgotten. That travel piece, across the top of the country is very important to people for umpteen different reasons. Now, the other 2 subjects, A-levels and cigarettes, I mean, I wouldn't put them on the list. I think there's many more heavyweight things we could be talking about. But there's one thing I will say in Rishi's defence. In the last 3 months, he's become more of a Conservative than he had been before that point, and he has a little bit of time. The mistake you make with a conference speech is to try to put everything in it. One thing he knows, as the PM, as he trots out what he wants to do for the election, he will always get a hearing, but I do accept that points 1 and 2, I mean, smoking's going away.
It's dull.
And
it's
A-levels only matters if you're A-level age.
I'm sorry, but this is it. It's dull, it's boring, it's beige, it's horrendous, it's not exciting. Go out in the driving rain on a Wednesday evening and knock on that door for me and go and get out the vote and tell them we're going to ban smoking. Said nobody ever.
No, and coming back to what Amy said, what would unite the Red Wall and the Blue Shires is the majority of people want to see immigration coming down. We've got a Conservative government presiding over record levels of net immigration, forecast to be over 1 million over 2 years come November the 23rd. That is shocking, Patrick. Nobody who voted Conservative wants that. We've got a government which is defying the views of its electorate, and the electorate wants to give it a really good kicking, and that's what they're going to get. I am forecasting a record general election defeat with an amazingly low turnout. You can hold me to that.
So you're going to say the turnout is the thing that does it for me and Amy. I will put this to you, that we have got a choice. An absolutely horrendous choice. You know, if Rishi Sunak is skimmed milk Lib Dems and the leader of the Lib Dems is actually a gone-off yogurt, and I don't know what Keir Starmer is, who on earth are people going to vote for? It's terrible. Is this the best of Britain, really? It's
well, the
terrible.
thing is, he has had, well, the Conservative Party have had 13 years to pasteurise. So that's quite a lot of time to get there. And so people are ready for a change, and you can't keep blaming things on the Labour Party, who haven't even had a chance.
No, it's not blaming things on the Labour Party. Let's
a
be
lot
clear.
of people who fall into that trap.
Rishi has a long way to go to convince people. But let's be clear, Keir Starmer has the answer to absolutely nothing.
Well, you just did it.
If Keir Starmer's the answer, we really need to know what the question is.
Well, the answer, the question would be: do you just want to vote for someone who isn't a Tory? And that would be it. But that's the biggest thing he's got going for him, right? At the moment, we've got Keir Starmer. Every time he opens his mouth, something unpopular comes out, and then you have these poor Labour MPs who have to follow him around with a big mop, and they go, "Oh, he didn't really mean that. He didn't really mean that." You know, this is it. Right. So actually, as the general election gets closer, then maybe we're going to end up in that situation. But in the meantime, I want you right now, Alison, on this show to win Rishi Sunak the next general election. You know, to say it. What should he have said? Come on.
Repeal the Climate Change Act immediately. Build 500,000 houses so that young people in this country have some hope. Get rid of all the gender identity, critical race theory from schools and ban children transitioning in schools. 3 things that'd be a damn sight more popular than the ones he came up with.
Makes you want to sing God Save the King, doesn't it? Oh, I'm pumped up now. Thank you very much. Right, coming up is Business Secretary Kemi Badenoch right that Britain is the best country in the world to be a black person? My panel will discuss that in tonight's Greatest Britain and Union Jackass. Stick around to see if that's enough for her to win tonight's crown too. Next, though, Fleet Street legend, the ever-dangerous Kelvin Mackenzie, will have his say on Kevin Keegan kicking off at female pundits, commentating on the men's game, but also a couple of other stellar stories as well. Don't you dare move.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner, Monday to Thursday, 9:30 a.m.
Who benefits from that? Not the British public.
And on Fridays, join us, Tom Harwood
and Ellie Costello from Britain's Newsroom.
That's what you get with this show. That's fantastic.
If it's happening, we're talking about it on Britain's Newsroom. GB News, Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute. Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christie's, at drive time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christie's, on GB News and GB News Radio.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There'll be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's time now for Uncancelled. Well, we discussed Kevin Keegan a little bit earlier on tonight, but he's extraordinarily claimed that he has a problem with female commentators talking about men's football. Now, we just heard from England goalkeeper Peter Shilton that he said that it was basically fine, but he could kind of understand it. I think we might be craving something a little bit stronger on this topic, don't you? Someone who might be a little bit more forthcoming with their views. I'm joined by Fleet Street legend Kelvin Mackenzie. Kelvin, thank you very, very much. Do you think women should just butt out of talking about men's football?
Well, look, just, because you get, anytime you criticise a woman today, you're a misogynist, It's absolutely incredible. In fact, there's one woman who describes herself tonight as the CEO of women's football, who said that there's a moral obligation for men to keep their views to themselves. Really? Honestly, in this world, look, I like Laura James, her golf on Sky. I love Annabelle Croft doing it on tennis. I do not actually enjoy the plethora of women giving their views on Premiership football and also talking about, I think, laughingly, talking about what happened to them when they were playing for, I don't know, some team like, say, Brentford Ladies or something. I just don't enjoy it. And I am saying I don't enjoy it. And I was very pleased that Kevin Keegan said it, because among people I know in football, they don't like it either.
Well, Kelvin, you could argue that the public. You could argue the public don't like it. Look at what's happening with Football Focus's figures, Kelvin. Alex Scott's there.
Yes.
They're tanking.
Yes. Now, that may be slightly unfair, actually, because the truth about the matter that those magazine video shows really are yesterday's idea. However, because when she came in charge, as Dan Walker points out, the man before her, they have lost 1 million in audience. Now, there may be a link or there may not be a link. I suspect there is a slight link. So why can't women just compete and come back and say this is this, that, and the other? Instead of that, they accuse you of misogyny. They don't like free speech at all. They don't like criticism. Why don't they just get on with it?
You know what, though? At the end of the day, it's about the quality of the product, actually. That's what really matters. That should matter more than affirmative action or positive discrimination. And I've got a load of mates who used to work at Sky Sports, OK? I know a load of them. And they say that the quality of the product there has been diminished beyond recognition because of positive discrimination.
Okay, yes, actually, I totally agree with you. However, it doesn't apply to all sports. You listen to Annabelle Croft, you will learn something, you will admire the way she puts her arguments and admire her knowledge of the game. I don't get that sense from a lot of the women who are currently being used. I'm not saying that in 10 years' time, there may not be some great commentators and you come away, or great pundits come away and say, that's fantastic. I can't name you one right now, and me and the rest of my mates do not want them doing it. And yet they will carry on doing it.
Well, they will carry on doing it, and, there is a case that goes, well, it's not a case, it's a fact, that the women's England team have been infinitely more successful than the men's football team recently, but whether or not that therefore qualifies, and that's kind of the point that Kevin Keegan, gosh, there's a case, were making, which was that it is a different beast going, being in the final, at the sharp end of a men's Champions League final versus, as you, I think, rather politely said, playing for Brentford Ladies. Kelvin, can I throw another story at you? I'm doing it. It's a Daily Mail exclusive tonight. Having revealed that a militant union leader at the heart of the doctors' strikes is, a Labour activist who boasted of charging the NHS £1,870 for a strike cover shift. By the way, we had someone who charged nearly £8,000 for a strike cover shift recently. These strikes are not really about the money, are they? It's political, do you think?
Oh, well, in fact, they said so. Only yesterday, the guy leading the strike said this won't be settled until Labour come in. They're hand in hand. Labour enjoy the fact that the doctors are making your mum's pain as a cannon to get them a pay rise. Who is surprised among your viewers? How many will be surprised that Labour activists are at the height of this strike? And can I tell you, if Labour get in, and let's hope that Alison doesn't actually represent the beating heart of the Conservative Party, if Labour get in, imagine what the RMT, BMA, all these other the teachers. What is life going to be like? It will be a nightmare. It will be the biggest mistake this country has ever made, and that includes having David Cameron as Prime Minister.
Well, look, they obviously will say, hey, these conditions are unworkable, we're losing a load of people to go and work in Australia, the pay is rubbish what we do, we're undervalued, you all clapped for us when COVID happened, and now we deserve more money, I suppose. But we can't get around the idea that, let's be honest, any industry, not just doctors, by the way, and all this, any industry that is heavily unionised is going to lean to the left, because unions are generally left-leaning. I can't really think of any right-wing unions.
They are
I think that's just
totally
a private members
left-leaning.
club. Yeah, all right.
We have a divided nation.
We have a divided nation. Kelvin, you always light up the show. Thank you very much. Kelvin McKenzie there, never mincing his words. There we are, former Fleet Street legend, still a Fleet Street legend in a way. Now, it's time to reveal today's greatest Briton and union jackass. I'll go with you, Alison, first. Who's your greatest Briton?
It's Dame Priti Patel, one of the stars of the Conservative conference, more balls than all the assembled men, and calling for democracy amongst the Tory grassroots. So Tories, proper Tories, can pick the leaders and determine the policies.
And I think she might have said something nice about GB News.
She was very flattering about GB News as well.
Oh, if only we had that clip.
I also want to welcome some more friends here tonight. Our friends that are here, the newest, most successful, most dynamic, no-nonsense news station, and the defenders of free speech. That is my friends at GB News. Thank you for everything that you do.
I did the auction at that do. Wore a gold jacket, never again. Sean, who is your greatest Briton?
My greatest British nominee is Business Secretary Kemi Badenoch, who said Britain is the best place for a black person to live. Look, no country is perfect, but this country is great, offers a great opportunity to come, get educated, raise a family and live a good life. And I think she's right. I love it here. Wouldn't want to be anywhere else.
Oh, we're off to an absolute flyer here. Amy, lower the tone.
My nominee is Dehenna Davidson for deciding her Tory colleagues' words about the trans community at conference were disgusting. Because I do agree.
All right, fair enough.
Have we got a clip?
I saw her at the... what was that?
We haven't got the clip, have we?
I don't know, have we? No. No, we haven't, no. But there we go.
You need to see it to believe it.
Yeah, you have to see it. Well, fair enough. I did actually see her at the LGBT Conservatives after-party thing. She was wearing a sparkly rainbow-coloured top. Anyway... my winner, or the winner, anyway, of Greatest Britain is Alison, and it's Dame Priti Patel. Way, well done Dame Priti, well done Alison, well done world. OK, Alison, who's your union jackass?
It is the Chancellor of the Exchequer, worst Chancellor in Tory history, Jeremy Hunt. I won't mispronounce his surname. A man without any balls, typical of the Lib Demery that is bringing the Conservative Party down.
I think I now have to say Jeremy Hunt would deny he doesn't have any balls. But it's a phrase I went into broadcasting for that kind of moment. Sean, who's union jackass?
My union jackass is Guardian columnist Owen Jones, who ran around Tory conference terrorising MPs with that terrible gotcha journalism, pretending to be a journalist. It's not journalism, it is political activism.
Really unfair.
And on top of that, he also did it to activists as well. That's not fair. If you want to be called a journalist, you have to be a journalist, not a political activist.
His
the
video.
same old double standard.
Watch the video.
Because, of course,
decide for yourself.
It is interesting. It is one thing, and you very rarely catch you standing up for Owen Jones. One thing I will say is that it was his own channel, and he did put the whole thing out there, which he could have edited. I know. I hear you, Sean. I hear you, Sean. Right, Amy, who's union jackass?
It's Kevin Keegan for saying he doesn't like listening to the lady footballers talking about men's football. Maybe it's because they're better at it and actually win stuff.
OK, right.
Good point.
I'm going to go union jackass, Jeremy Hunt. OK, there we go. So we've double Alisoned, haven't we? Fantastic. Oh, there we are. Right, well done, everybody. Well done, well done, well done. OK, thank you very much, my wonderful panel. Great to have you all on. And thank you so much, everybody who has been watching, who's been listening, who's been consuming this content, wherever you are. I love you all. I'll see you tomorrow.
Hello again, it's Aidan McGivern here from the Met Office for the GB News forecast. Fine in the far south over the next 24 hours. A different story elsewhere. There will be cloud. There'll be outbreaks of rain as well. Not everywhere all the time, but some significant rain could build up in places by the weekend. Low pressure at the moment to the northwest of Scotland. A number of trailing weather fronts bringing a lot of cloud to the UK for the rest of Thursday and into Friday. Those outbreaks of rain continuing over parts of Wales into the Midlands, Northern England, Northern Ireland, southern Scotland. Initial band of rain clearing from the far north of Scotland, pushed away by a strong wind. And it's going to be a warm night everywhere with that wind and the cloud. Temperatures in many places not falling much below 15 degrees. Then we start off Friday with those cloudy conditions, the breezy conditions as well. Plenty of brightness actually for central and northern Scotland. A much better day compared with Thursday and certainly Saturday. But for much of Northern Ireland into southern Scotland later, as well as northern England, rain will persist through the day. It's to the south where we're going to see the warmth building and increasingly high temperatures through the weekend are expected. But for Scotland, certainly it's going to be a wet start to the weekend. That rain really building up through Saturday and the first part of Sunday. Western parts of Scotland at risk of seeing 150 millimetres of rainfall. A very different story for the rest of the UK, and certainly across the southern half of England and Wales, we'll see temperatures into the low to mid-20s.
The Live Desk with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Pip Thompson. It's here Monday to Friday on GB News.
From midday, we'll bring you the news as it breaks, whenever it's happening and wherever it's happening, from across the UK and around the world.
Refreshing, feisty, but with a bit of fun too.
If it matters to you, we'll have it covered on TV, radio and online.
Join the Live Desk on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which